Good morning. I think we are. Hopefully, you can all hear me okay. If you can, just drop a little message in the chat. That would be really useful for our team just to make sure things are running smoothly as they should be. So, yeah, once again, thank you for joining us. We've had a really positive response to this webinar. I think we've had best part of 170 people sign up, which is fantastic. We run these quarterly. We get the experts from our team in SEO, PPC, web, and design just to talk through all the updates. As we know, lots of changes in marketing at the moment, this year more than any year, it seems. So these quarterly updates are a really useful way to stay up to date and, just understand how things are changing and which way the wind's blowing in regards to marketing. So we're going to cover a few things today. I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to our business, first of all, and why you should trust us, more importantly. And then we're going to run through each area separately. So we're going to start with search engine optimization, which will be run by Neil, who's our SEO team lead. PPC, which will be run by Rob, who's our growth director. Web, which is run by our technical director, Leo. And then design, who is... that's being presented by James, who's our head of design. And then we'll have time for some questions at the end as well. So normally these take around 45 minutes or so, up to an hour we have in the diary. So if anyone wants to stick around and ask our experts some questions, you're more than welcome to do so. And just quickly, before we jump into our presentations, I'm just going to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour as to who we are and why you should listen to us. So with the Digital Maze, we're a full-service marketing agency. We're based in the Midlands, and we've been going for the best part of 15 years now. With that means we've got, probably 50 years of combined digital marketing experience at this point. We're very proud to be certified by the likes of Google, WordPress, Microsoft, Facebook, and basically anywhere you need to be accredited, we are accredited. And the core services we offer as a business are search engine optimization, paid media, web design, and development, as you might expect, given the topics in this webinar. And overall, we're just really passionate about helping home and garden, lifestyle, direct-to-consumer, SaaS and service brands grow and scale with confidence. So that's us. Like I say, there'll be some chances for questions towards the end of the webinar, but without further ado, I am going to hand over to Neil, who is going to take you through search engine optimization. So let me just do some housekeeping and get Neil front and center. Okie, I think that is with you now, Neil.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Neil, as Rob says. I'm going to take you through the latest updates in SEO for the last 3 months. There's been quite a lot happening, especially around AI, Google's algorithm changes. I'll break it down slide by slide and highlight what these updates mean for us and our clients. So without further ado, key changes in SEO. So first one, AI mode is here. Google has officially rolled out AI mode in search for the UK. It launched in the US and India first, and then in July became available to us in Britain. You'll now see AI mode sitting next to the traditional all search tab. Users can choose to search in AI mode instead of using standard search. The interface of AI mode looks very similar to AI engines you might be aware of, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. The idea of AI mode is to provide more detail, more explanation, and more comparison to users in Google. It's designed for people who want a deeper answer rather than just a list of links, which is what traditional SEO provides. Users can search in AI mode in the same way they do on traditional search, using text, images, voice, or other options on both desktop and mobile. And importantly, I guess, with AI mode is that this is Google's direct competition to OpenAI, who are rumored themselves to be making their own search engine. So suspicions that over the next couple of years there's going to be quite a battle between OpenAI, who run ChatGPT, and Google. Slide 2. So the great decoupling. You may have heard of this. It's something that's becoming a bit of a buzzword within the SEO community. It was coined by a guy called Darwin Santos to describe what's happening in SEO with impressions and clicks since AI overviews arrived. So for those who don't know, AI overviews are that box that you may now see at the top of Google, which kind of gives you an AI summary of your search query. So the great decoupling means that traditionally in SEO, we've seen clicks and impressions within Google's Search Console generally move in sync. But now we're seeing impressions rise while clicks fall. So they are decoupling those two lines, the blue and the purple there on the right. Why is this happening? Well, this is because your site might appear in that AI overview snippet. So you get that visibility and that impression, that brand awareness, that link back to your site within that AIO. But users are less likely to click through to your site compared to those traditional search results that we've become accustomed to over the past kind of 20 years. Chap from Google called Martin Splitt has admitted that this is happening, where clicks are going down and impressions are rising. He agrees that AI overviews mean fewer organic clicks overall, but he argues that brand visibility within those AI overviews could lead to more conversions further down the line. So your site may well get the same amount of conversions overall, but there may be quite a few less that are directly attributed to organic search. AI overviews. So yeah, I touched on them there. They're actually still evolving. They've been around now for a couple of years, but even though they're live now across most searches, Google is still actively testing and adjusting them. For example, one change that we've seen this year is that industries such as health and finance, where that information has to be as accurate as possible, Google has started to cut back on the amount of AI views that are actually shown. That is due to potential concerns around, obviously, the accuracy and the risk of spreading misinformation through those AI views. What this tells us is two things. Firstly, Google, thankfully, is listening to user feedback and trying to balance the usefulness of these AI views with reliability that you would potentially get from proper sources on the web. Secondly, it also tells us that the rollout of AI overviews is not fixed. What we see today may look very different in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, etc. So for us in the SEO world, that pretty much means volatility, and that's likely to continue for a while. Impressions and clicks from AI views will likely fluctuate as Google experiments further. It's another reason why we need to keep monitoring that closely, and you should be keeping an eye on the performance from those AI overviews over the next few months. And on top of that, I've even seen in some searches evidence that AI overviews are now being tested featuring below traditional organic links. So at the moment, they're just all at the top, but there's some evidence now that they're testing having them kind of below the first couple of results or even towards the bottom of the results page. So that, if that continues, that might help some SEOs claw back some of those clicks that they've lost to AI reviews. Slide 4. So this is on Google's core algorithm update from June 2025. So the latest core algorithm update began rolling out on June the 30th. It took until July 17th to complete, but I've noticed quite a lot of volatility even since July the 17th. So it may be that algorithm update is still kind of causing fluctuations, which you might see in your rankings, in your traffic, and your visibility. As always, with every core algorithm update, Google says the goal is to surface more relevant and satisfying content to its users. Some sites saw big gains, others saw big drops, as is also generally the case. And if your site has been affected from those updates, the advice from Google and SEOs has not changed. If you're creating helpful content written for people, by people on the whole, you should be fine. But if you're struggling after an update, I've put a link there to the post from Google, which shows their guidelines on that reliable people first content. So be sure to have a look at that if you've been affected. Now I'm going to move on to Google EEAT guidelines. So in the world of AI modes, AI overviews, and constant algorithm updates, EEAT has never been more important. Originally, it was just EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. But in 2022, Google added a further E for experience. So it's now experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Simply put, you need to show users and Google why they should trust your content. Why should they believe what you say? There are lots of ways that we do this for our clients, and that you can do too. For example, reviews. So user-generated content like reviews is proven to have a really good impact here. But also stuff like detailed author pages, which show where the content has come from. Your company history, that's a really good way to do it too. And traditional stuff like backlinks, accurate contact details. And one thing we also like to do is show the team. So meet the team pages and kind of history around the ethics of your company, and that kind of thing can also help in satisfying these guidelines. What that's kind of the way that that's affected us here at the TDM is that we're now putting more of our SEO time into focusing on EAT to make sure that the content that we provide or that our clients provide stands out as valuable to Google and to users. And if you want to learn more on this topic, I'd recommend our new blog on EAT, which has been written by our content specialist, Susan, and a link to that is at the bottom there, and you'll find it on our website. And it's really in depth and goes into far more detail than I've touched on here. Next is on Google Search Console. So this is obviously where we get a lot of our information in the SEO world on clicks and impressions, click-through rate, etc. for our sites. Google Search Console has had a few updates recently. The slightly fun one is the fact that it's now got a new logo, which probably only excites boring SEOs like me. But yeah, it's something. But more useful to everyone is potentially the addition of insights. So this sits at the top left-hand navigation in the interface of GSC and gives you a quick 30-day performance view for your site. It shows clicks, impressions, top pages, and keywords, and how they compare to the previous 30 days. So it's quite an easy way to find the most important information about your site in one easy place. Another big change is coming in GSC but hasn't arrived yet. AI mode reporting is on the way, according to Google, which means we will hopefully be able to separate AI mode clicks from traditional mode clicks, and the same for impressions. Right now, those clicks and impressions are just bundled into overall numbers, which is not particularly useful for us trying to discern how well we are performing in AI mode. So one other thing that has started to become way more important in the past couple of years is obviously AI engines themselves, so like ChatGPT, etc. And we're starting to track that in Google Analytics. It's not automatically tracking in its own specific channel. So if you're comfortable yourselves using GA4 and Tag Manager, you can track those sources, those AI sources. But if not, we can help you there. Being able to track AI traffic is important because obviously that traffic is growing exponentially, and we need to understand it beyond just traditional search numbers. So in GA4, you can segment traffic using such options as explore reports, custom channels, or even if you plug into Looker Studio too. Tracking AI overviews and featured snippets is slightly trickier. This involves using Tag Manager and maybe even some JavaScript setup. So that's a bit more of a advanced feature that, again, we can help you with, or you could probably find that information online in a bit more detail. And also some mainstream SEO tools such as SEMrush, Ahrefs, Systrix are also beginning to offer their own data on kind of AI views and that kind of thing too. And even some of them now allow you to set up ChatGPT as its own separate search engine to track like rankings, etc. So there's lots of options out there for how you track AI, but I would recommend that if you're not already on this, you should be. And because of this, we now report to our clients on potentially 3 channels if it's a e-commerce site. So we split it into organic search, organic shopping, and AI driven search. So this means that we can show the contribution of each specific channel to our clients, whether it's leads, revenue, traffic, etc. And there is just an example of where you can see that the third option there, AI driven search, you can see the massive amount that has increased by 644% year on year. So that kind of just highlights why you should be focusing on this. And finally from me is preferred sources. Google has started to introduce this, and what it does is it allows users to remove certain publishers from their top stories feed. So for example, this is only an example, but if someone doesn't want to see stories from a newspaper like the Daily Mail, they can filter it out. It's still rolling out. It's not actually available to everyone in the UK at the moment, but the idea is that it gives users more control over the content that they actually see. Some argue this is a positive step. Others may say it's risky around kind of censorship and that kind of thing. But it is similar to what many news aggregator sites already offer anyway. So Google's just trying to tap into that space. So if you're interested in hearing more about this, by all means, read that blog post from Google there that I have linked. So yeah, that's a quick tour through the last 3 months of SEO. The key themes have been around AI integration, visibility versus clicks, the ongoing and just the general ongoing importance of strong, trustworthy content. As always, here at TDM, we're keeping a close eye on these changes to make sure that all of our clients stay ahead of them. Feel free to shoot over an email to me directly if you have any questions on anything I've gone through here, and I think we're going to have some question time at the end anyway.
Perfect. All right, hopefully everyone can hear me now. So I'm Rob Sherwood, the growth director here at the Digital Maze. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second. Hopefully you can all see that now. So yeah, as I say, I'm Rob Sherwood, growth director here at the Digital Maze. I am subbing in for Leo, one of our PPC account managers who unfortunately couldn't be here today. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, though, I've got experience of running PPC and SEO teams, but my role here as growth director is mainly to focus on the sales side of the business, whilst also managing our internal marketing. One of the things I'm really passionate about as well is just having that ROI sort of focus. I'll just 1 second there. Is just having that ROI focus, as it's really important to make sure that whatever we're doing for our clients is really delivering a positive ROI for them. So I'm going to touch on PPC first and key changes that we're seeing across Google and Microsoft. First being with Performance Max. When it was released back in 2020, it was very much a black box with very little visibility, but something that Google were trying to promote and really push. Over the last few years, they've really opened out its visibility, and more recently, they've allowed an expanded negative keyword limit of up to 10,000 negative keywords. I think this is probably an expected change whilst they increase the amount of search term visibility, purely because if you've got more visibility to search terms, you're going to want to then translate some of those into negative keywords as well. But it's a really welcome change and just means that we can really understand where money is being spent within PMAX campaigns themselves. Secondly, so the rise of AI overviews. This is something that Neil had previously touched on, and we're seeing more and more of it. Its placement is really varying. Neil again mentioned that it's also been seen at the bottom of search results. But what it means for advertisers is they find themselves questioning, what role do the ads play in terms of placement? Do they feature above, below, or within AI overviews? And essentially, I think this is something that Google's going to be testing, and it's going to really depend on sort of search term and the engagement that people typically have. But essentially, just to give you some reassurance, Google Ads revenue makes up 3/4 of Google's total revenue. So they're really not going to do anything that's too detrimental for advertisers, as it is such a key revenue channel for them. And then thirdly, there we have new measurement tools. So Google is pushing server-side tracking and the new Google Tag Gateway to combat this loss of third-party cookies, which we've seen over the last couple of years. Essentially, the goal of this is just trying to make more accurate conversion measurement a top priorities for advertisers. Early results have seen that advertisers using the gateway have seen an 11% increase in measurement signals. What this means is essentially with the Google tag, you can apply those tags directly via your domain rather than Google's servers. If we move on to campaign structures, demand gen, it's fairly new campaign type. It's been going for maybe a year or two now. And essentially it's something that Google are wanting to see advertisers use more and more. So they're trying to make it more appealing, enhancing it with new features like lookalike audiences, and essentially just giving users more control and seeing it as a really, really good campaign type for targeting sort of higher up the funnel and mid funnel options. Now, essentially what that means, just in short there, is that it's more customization and visibility to try and close the gap on paid social channels, as it is quite a visual campaign option. And then down there, it's no surprise that CPCs are continuing to climb and competition is also climbing. So really what this means is there's not much that we can do in terms of expecting it to come down. Amazon have certainly tried that by trying to pull away from Google Shopping to see what impact that would overall have. And some of the results from that were quite interesting, actually, that when Amazon pulled away, advertisers in those places found that the clicks went up, cost per clicks went down, but interestingly, ROAS and actually conversions didn't change because they found that people's behavior was still that they'd go offline and that they'd be looking on Amazon and various other places. So when competition drops, it doesn't necessarily mean that your ROAS and your performance is going to increase. But the biggest recommendation here is always going to be testing, making sure that you're trying new campaign types, you're A/B testing. It could be locations, just anything within that to try and essentially improve on your current results. I have got a question there. When would you recommend testing demand gen campaigns? I suppose it's probably most applicable when you are finding yourself hitting the ceiling with impression share for maybe your bottom of funnel campaigns, and you're wanting to try and still drive more spend through Google and maybe trying to attract more people to the brand and again hit that sort of mid and upper funnel. That may mean that you can then remarket to them and move them down those stages so that when they are in the consideration stage and they're looking to make a purchase, they're already aware of you and have that sort of trust, I suppose, to actually go ahead and convert. And then the very latest updates, which I added this morning, was the end of manual language targeting. So this is Google taking away a little bit of control, but also trying to ease things for advertisers. Where essentially they're using AI-driven language detection based on user signals. This is only relevant for search campaigns, though. Non-search campaigns will remain unaffected and retain their existing language targeting settings. And then on the 19th on Search England, it was launched that search partner network placement visibility is improving, which is great because search partner network, again, maybe a little bit like a black box where you're just trying to understand more and more about where within the search partner network are we generating impressions and what role do they have. So by essentially increasing and providing site level impressions within that, advertisers have greater control and greater understanding about whether brand suitability and sort of optimizing for better results within that SPN. On the 20th of August, it was also mentioned that mismatched or incomplete cart data diagnostics tool has been released by Google. What this is trying to do is essentially alert advertisers to issues within shopping cart data, incomplete or mismatched cart data, and that will now be flagged so that you can go in, you can fix that issue, and it will not distort your sales reports. Moving on to key changes in paid social, I've got a few slides here. So Meta have really tried to push Advantage Plus and increase its dominance as a campaign type. They are now the default, and you can try and, I suppose, resist that a little bit by changing your inputs, but they are typically regarded as suggestions that the algorithm may override. I found that automation and these sort of campaigns within Meta can work really, really well. And there are ways that you can try and strengthen them anyway. So these are things like AI generated creative, which we mentioned on this second point, and just making sure that you're not totally relying on the output that the AI gives, as you can give it brand assets like logos and colors just to ensure consistency. And then that third update there with Meta GEM and Andromeda. So Meta has introduced these new machine learning models, generative experience model and Andromeda, to enhance its ad ranking and delivery systems. There's a huge amount of data that goes on behind the scenes within Meta and just sort of any ad campaign. So what they're trying to do is just improve the way that this is processed so the output and the results for advertisers improves through better ad relevant for the target audience and essentially customers. Moving on to paid social and looking at shopping a little bit more. So generally, people are becoming more comfortable with in-app checkout and purchases within features like TikTok Shop. And really, this is useful for advertisers as you can really shorten that customer journey, which is going to be more important for, I suppose, simpler purchases that aren't going to need a lot of consideration. So if you think clothes, it might be more likely to happen there as opposed to if you were buying a hot tub, which you might still then need to go onto a website and get a little bit more information. So it's going to work better for some areas, not so good for others. But what's really important is just making sure that the quality of what you're advertising and the trust signals within platforms like TikTok are there, just to try and encourage people to convert within platform. Of course, this does mean that if they're not then going onto your website, you may see a drop in traffic to your website. But ultimately, if your social channels are driving revenue for you, it could be converting at a much greater rate than trying to pull them away and extending that customer journey. So there's definitely a lot of positives there, and you just really need to view it as a multi-channel approach and assess everything in unison when reporting. And then there, we also have short form video is king, has been for a long time. People's attention spans are getting worse and worse, and we do typically switch off if we don't like something within 1 or 2 seconds. So having that hook is really, really important, particularly in paid social channels, where it's very easy to move on. So you really need to make sure that you grab people's attention. Advertising platforms like TikTok are really trying to make it easier for advertisers by introducing native editing tools and really trying to improve on those. So they're definitely trying to pay attention and make it a lot easier for us marketers. Moving on to data and privacy shifts. So first party data is critical in paid social just as much as it is in PPC. I've already briefly mentioned that third party cookies has been depreciated. And so it's really important to build and leverage your own customer data through remarketing lists, lookalike audiences, and essentially just trying to prioritize that first party data collection and then filtering that through 2 channels so that you can inform on targeting and retargeting strategies. On new attribution models, so Meta is experimenting with incremental attribution. This essentially helps AI models help to predict whether an ad was the true cause of a conversion, offering a different way to measure the impact of campaigns. This is purely because they totally accept that advertisers may find that they introduce someone to a product via paid social channels, and maybe someone goes onto a search, and then the role of a Google Ads might play there, and then remarketing. It could be email. So there's so many different touch points in a consumer journey that they're really just trying to understand what value their channel has, and we're going to see this more and more as well. Moving on to LinkedIn ads. Accelerate campaigns are being heavily promoted. It's an AI-driven, objective-based campaign tool, and early results have seen that it has driven a 42% reduction in cost per action compared to classic campaigns. This data was a little bit dated there, but it's definitely something to worth looking into. Essentially, what this tool does is it combines LinkedIn's own data with yours to find and target high intent audiences, making campaign setup and optimization much more efficient. What they've also done is they're looking to improve Campaign Manager, simply making it a little bit more user-friendly, and that's things like it's easier to now duplicate ads across multiple campaigns and accounts. We've just tried to really encourage advertisers to use their platform more by making it easier to use. And then a really welcome change as well is this extended conversions API lookback window, which is really important for B2B marketers with long sales cycles, where you can now have a lookback window of 1 year. Really, really important when you consider that for a lot of long sales cycles that might take 6 to 8 months, you want to be able to look back and understand, did LinkedIn drive that initial inquiry, or did they have a role to play anywhere along the way? So that's really, really important. That is everything from me. If you have any questions, please ask at the end. I will also include links to sources for each of these afterwards. So if you want to read about any of these particular changes anymore, then
Bro, thanks, Rob. So far you have heard from Rob and Neil, SEO PPC. I am the technical director at the Digital Maze, and today I'm not going to run you through lots of potentially boring chatter about development, just more a little bit about AI and what's coming and what's happened in the world of e-commerce. So, starting with what's happening with the key AI agents in recent times. We start off with ChatGPT. Week or two ago, they released their new kind of model, as they call it, which is ChatGPT 5. These AI releases are becoming very much the same across the board. Essentially, they usually mention better reasoning, faster performance, not as many hallucinations, so on and so forth. Whilst I've been testing the latest version, it does tend to think longer if you ask it a more in-depth question or request, but it's not a lot different from the previous version there. So it's nothing revolutionary, nothing different from what we currently see. It's just a slightly more iterated model. The big change in recent times in the world of ChatGPT is actually their agent mode. So this allows you to send it a command, usually a series of tasks like do me a pitch deck, invite these 3 people to a meeting, and send me a draft or something like that. So you can kind of create step-by-step instructions and ask the agent to act them out for you. It's early doors for it. It's a great concept, but again, when I've been testing this, it's not that good, and it does take quite a long time, sometimes a lot longer than what it would take you to actually do it yourself. So that's a good feature just to keep an eye on. And again, similar to the other agents that are out there, recent update was around voice. So if you're using this on mobile, you can have better kind of verbal conversations with the model, and it's added some more voices to speak back to you. Generally speaking, though, ChatGPT, in my opinion, is best for essentially everything. It's not excellent at one specific thing like some of the other models. You can do anything with ChatGPT, whether it's planning, brainstorming, helping to fix certain issues, getting a AI opinion on something. It's a really, really versatile tool that will always give you a great head start, and essentially do the job that it asks of you, or you ask of it, should I say. And then moving on to Gemini. So they also released a new model, which was their 2.5 Pro version. Very similar to ChatGPT, if not identical, in the fact it stated more reliable reasoning, faster performance, reduced hallucinations, so on and so forth. They did add in a better way of using their kind of canvas image generation within their model, but again, not that much different to the previous version. The exciting one from Gemini is actually Gemini Live, which when you're speaking with Gemini, usually on your phone, you can kind of it will take control of the camera. You can show it objects and things around you, ask it questions, so on and so forth. This is a lot more useful for personal life than work. So, you could show it your ingredients you got at home and ask it to put a recipe together and things like that is the general idea behind it. Identify certain objects and things that you don't know that are out and about. So yeah, it's quite a cool little feature. Again, early days. Voice, again, they did the same. So improved voice recognition. Again, in my opinion, Gemini is slightly better at this than ChatGPT. If you want to have a conversation with it, because you can't be bothered to type, it generally understands you a lot better than the ChatGPT app. But overall, Gemini still is generally best for personal use, things at home, planning, trips, and finding the best restaurants, that kind of thing. Good integration with obviously the Google Suite, as you would expect. And they also have a deep research tool, which is really good if you've got a specific task for it. It will go away, do loads and loads of research. Can take 20-30 minutes, but it'll give you a nice lengthy document that you can use to help with whatever task that you're looking at. And finally, there is another GPT outside of those two called Claude. Not many of you might not use this. You might have heard of it, but this is another one that's been around for just as long as the others. Again, they released a new version recently, which offers more reliable reasoning, faster performance, and reduced hallucinations, just like all of the others. Claude tends to be really, really good with code-based workloads and really like lengthy documents, interpreting and understanding them. Again, it's not that great at voice, but it did release a voice feature just like the other two recently. But generally speaking, Claude is really good for development, debugging, writing new functions and things like that. So it is a tool that we tend to use from time to time over here. So moving away from the world of AI, stepping into e-commerce briefly. One question I always get asked a lot when we're speaking to potential new customers is Shopify versus WooCommerce, which is why I like to include it in these webinars. So recent change over the past couple of months is that WooCommerce has actually taken back a little bit of market share from Shopify, but they're still very even. And in the world of Shopify, what they have been focused on is a lot of what they call creating themes. So they've released a new suite of themes and integrating that with their AI engine, so that if you want to build out pages on the fly and enhance your products, you're doing less clicking and dragging and more talking to their AI sidekick, they call it, to add new sections and can you style this section like this. Haven't actually tested this out in depth, but I think it would help basic page creation and things like that if you didn't have a developer to help you out with that. And then they have done a bit of work to ramp up their B2B operations a little bit, just trying to play catch up with the likes of WooCommerce and other e-commerce agents. So adding in minimum order values and a bit more with international shipping and taxing from their recent updates. But the exciting one that they announced was all around their new themes that you can use. Then moving on to the world of WooCommerce. So they released a few new features, again, to keep up with Shopify in the early part of this year. But since then, they're all focused on performance. So they're really working on the scalability side of their platform. So in admin, they've rewritten a lot of code behind the scenes. They're quoting up to 95% improvement. I tailored that down to about 70%. And again, on basket and checkout, they're really trying to emulate Shopify's flow and focus on the performance of basket and checkout. So in a year or two's time, no matter what WooCommerce store you go to, the chances are that basket and checkout experience will be very familiar, just like it is in Shopify. And then from an editorial point of view, they've added better ways to build out product categories. So you don't need to do complicated queries to bring a mishmash of products from different categories or tags. You can do it throughout the UI now. And finally, which is quite a cool thing, so you used to be able to get plugins to do this, but out the box, you can create baskets and share them with your friends and families. From a retailer perspective, you can build out baskets that have discount codes applied, which is really useful from that perspective. And finally, again, this is just because I get asked it all the time, a quick comparison between the two, why you would choose one over the other. So I generally say to people, if you have more complicated product setup with lots of attributes and variations and things like that, Woo probably will be a better bet. Shopify, you'll end up using lots of extensions to do a quite basic task. Wider speaking, you've got startup small stores are well with Shopify, easy to set up. You don't need to think about infrastructure and maintenance and things like that. It's all kind of handled for. But when you start wanting to push the boundaries, it'll either start costing you a lot of money or you'll need some really custom development. Whereas on the world of WooCommerce, that gives you a hell of a lot of flexibility. There's not many requirements that I've come across that can't be done in Woo. So that's why we tend to I wouldn't say push people down the Woo route, but Woo tends to be right for a lot of the customers that we deal with because they are integrating with certain ERP systems or they have a lot of content on the side that they want to keep and maintain. And I think that's it from me. So now moving on to...
Hello, everybody. Sharing my screen for a moment, taking over from Liam there. Okay. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm head of web design at the Digital Maze. What it means is I lead a small team who make all the sort of front end experiences for our clients, for things like that. So we're not heavily versed in all the coding, but we're there in the design side. Why is my opinion worth listening to? Well, I've been in the game for almost 20 years now, worked across digital, print, beyond. I've been leading teams in web since 2012-ish, fully qualified, all that kind of stuff. Probably done about somewhere in the region of 300 projects, lost count somewhere along the way. So I want to talk about something quite top level about the design world today. And I'm going to start with a statement. Aren't Adobe great? No, they're rubbish. They're monopolistic, they're uncompetitive, they're unresponsive, it's difficult software to learn, it's inflexible, it's overly expensive, and a focus on shiny features, not usability. You might wonder why a designer is coming to a call and slagging off the number one tool in the design world, and it's this simple. We kind of live in a world now where there's some real competition for Adobe. So if you're an individual who's paying for an Adobe license, or you have a team of designers at your business and you're paying for expensive Adobe licenses, you might want to examine if that's something you want to continue doing. So Creative Cloud, if you pay for everything, is very expensive. It's the team's plan is something around £80 a month, something like that, probably minus a penny. And that's, billed monthly on an annual contract, so it locks you in quite a bit. But we're in a world now when what were once niche tools, so Figma, which is something I use every single day of my working life, which is started its life as a UI and UX design tool, and you've got Canva, which is more of sort of a mass market design proposition. These products are maturing, and they're starting to expand beyond their original use. So these have much lower costs, somewhere in the realm of 30 to 40 on average per user. At least that's for Figma. I'm not entirely sure what the Canva costs are, but they usually have like a free onboarding thing. So if you're looking, to sort of expand into doing some more design in your business, you want to make your own ads, like Rob was talking about, that kind of stuff, then this could be the way to go for you. You probably don't need every feature Adobe does. Photoshop is a really good program. It's really old, but it's really complex. It does all sorts of stuff that you probably don't need unless you're actually editing photos. The clue is obviously in the name, although it's lost some meaning over time. AI is closing the gap for some of that stuff. So, if you just need to expand an image, remove something from an image, that's a lot of the time you can do that on your phone these days. Some of the core feature sets of these more complex, older apps aren't necessarily required unless you are really pro level. You also get better collaboration and review in these other apps because they're newer. They don't have as much technical debt as the old stuff. They're able to do lots of fancier stuff. Adobe's trying to play catch up in this space, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're playing catch up. And I find that Canva and Figma's tools are more focused on what you're getting out of them. So they're more about the output, whereas Photoshop is like you're just sent into a garage with a load of tools and said, have a go with this and see what you can come up with. Same for Illustrator, After Effects, all that kind of stuff. They're not as focused on the outputs. Whereas something like Figma has a new tool called Buzz, which is all about social and ad templates. Canva's full of templates. It's got video editors. It's got everything in it that you could ever need, really. It's also worthy of note that Adobe has a history of abandoned and undeveloped products. So as much as they might bring out competition for these two ecosystems, a lot of the time, if they don't succeed, they will just walk away from them and you're left holding the can. So this has happened to Adobe XD. That happened to us, actually, before I switched to Figma. We jumped before we were pushed. Adobe XD was the UI UX competitor from Adobe to things like Figma and Sketch. Failed miserably. They abandoned it when they tried to buy Figma and failed at that as well. Adobe Spaces was a product that they announced at their big keynote that was meant to make working with teams a lot easier and has just vanished from thin air. They never talk about it anymore. It never came out. Nothing ever happened with it. And there's a whole sort of graveyard here of either dead or non-updated apps like Neo, which was a 3D app, one that I spoke about on here, a webinar for us a while ago, which was quite good when it first came out, and they've just ignored it. Basically for Adobe, if they don't see immediate ROI on something, they tend to walk away from it. So you could be left in that scenario. It's also quite difficult to migrate and leave from Adobe, which, you know, is something you've got to consider if you're making choices now about what you get on board with. Adobe is difficult in terms of managing users on the platform and who owns what file, whereas the other things tend to operate in the business owns the files and the users can change them. Adobe bills monthly, but on an annual plan, so you can't cancel month to month. You have to, even on the business stuff anyway, I'm not sure about individuals, but on the business side, you have to wait till the end of that year and you can't set it to automatically lapse. You have to cancel it manually in that last month. And that's their pricing trap, essentially. Just get you on board, get you reliant on it, and then you can't leave, or you forget to leave and you've paid for another year and you're locked into another contract. So if you were to choose between these two ecosystems today, what would you pick? So there's some pros to both of them. I'm not going to list every single thing off here, but on the whole, Canva is extremely easy to use. It's geared at people who aren't qualified designers. Essentially, you're someone who wants to get a bit of design done, wants to make something look better. Canva's going to hold your hand through that process. It's going to teach you what you need to know, and it's going to give you sort of the right tool set to get a good, acceptable output. You can get better at Canva and make better and better stuff with it. It's got some more niche tools, but on the whole, it's designed around putting out good enough design quickly and efficiently. Figma, on the other hand, has extremely superior real-time collaboration. Multiple people can work on a document at once. I know there's some of that in Canva, but Figma's great at it. You can, both Canva and Figma, just open them in a web browser. You don't need to install any apps. Figma does have an app. I'm not sure about Canva. You've got generous plans on the main UI tool in Figma. But it's also got new tools focused on social media stuff. So it's chewing away at some of Canva's stuff there a little bit. I'm going to talk about some of their new stuff in a moment. But generally, Figma is an ecosystem for people who are purely in the digital world. It can do some print stuff. You can, design something and then print it or send it to a PDF, but it's not got that level of stuff. But in today's world, we're all on a webinar about digital marketing. Then I think, you might want to be looking at something like Figma as the ecosystem for all of your online outputs. Cons then, they both require a constant internet connection. In today's world, I don't really see that as a massive issue, but it's worth mentioning. If you were planning on going somewhere remote and getting a load of work done for a little getaway somewhere, you're probably not going to be able to do it on Canva and Figma if you're out in the Hebrides or something. Figma can lag with large files, but what doesn't, and as I've mentioned, it's mainly digitally focused. Canva is not great at what we call vector editing, so I think logos, etc. It's kind of basic, it lets you operate around with shapes rather than making your own stuff. And you can find that an over-reliance on templates in Canva can make work look a bit samey. So if you're picking the same templates as a lot of other people, your outputs are going to be similar to theirs. And again, like Figma, it's not fantastic for print. It can do it. These are all sort of cons that are only really there if you're not careful with them and you're a heavily print-based place, in which case, say, stay with Adobe. So what would you pick? I think Canva, if you're a new team looking to dabble in design output, so say you're the type of people who've been making something in PowerPoint or in Word and trying to make it look better and it's frustrating, have a look at Canva. You're probably more capable than you think. So you might, Canva's the tool that's there to empower you to start outputting decent design work, whether you've done it before or not, and you might be pleasantly surprised by what you're able to do. I think it's also good for established teams where they've got a little bit of design knowledge. They're not looking to remake the wheel, but it's great at managing brand oversight. So you can set a lot of stuff in there about what the brand is, what you're able to use. Maybe you've got multiple brands you need to manage. You can open a template and go, I need to use this brand on this template, or bring in the logo, bring in the colors, that kind of stuff. So if you're managing stuff remotely across distributed teams, that can actually be really powerful. And it might be worth accepting some of the shortcomings of Canva and working with those restrictions rather than against them, because you'll get a lot more out of it from that. Figma is essentially really good for teams like my own. So pros who are working in the digital space, who want to get work done fast, they're focused on outputs. I know whether I'm making a website, an app, whether I'm making creative for a social media campaign, for a paid campaign. I want to show some animation, some prototyping. Figma can do some of that. I think it's great for embedded design teams who use one or two things in Photoshop now that probably can have that gap bridged by AI tools, either within Figma, maybe even paired up with Canva, or just other apps on the web. There's all that kind of stuff that you feel you need Adobe software, but when you actually get down to the nitty-gritty of what you're doing on a day-to-day, you might not. We do still use a couple of features in Photoshop. I'm going to talk about that later, but we're very close to thinking, can we just ditch Photoshop and Illustrator entirely? And coming from a team that's done 300 odd projects, that should say something. So what's new in these applications? Canva has recently launched something called Canva Sheets, which is totally unique. Didn't see it coming. And I think it speaks exactly to what I said about audiences who, make some stuff in PowerPoint, make some stuff in Word and try and make it look good. This can, exactly what they've shown here, make your own little campaign tracker or something. You could even make your P&L sheets look fun or something like that. I don't know. Or if you've got a sheet that you need to send to a client, and you just want it to look a bit more professional than here's a .xls or whatever, then this kind of stuff's interesting. And it just shows that Canva are thinking about the end product more than they're thinking about the tool set that gets you there. So Canva Sheets is niched down to making a sheet look good. It's not, I need to make a load of separate JPEGs and paste them in a cell in Excel or something. They've also introduced work kits. So these are things that I was talking about, the brand stuff. So the more creative people in your organization could create work kits for you. So say you're doing a symposium or a conference, something like that, and you want a slightly different take on the brand that's going to be used on all these templates. Your designers can go away, create all those templates, create all that stuff, and then the people who are managing it can just open those templates, fill in the text, and off you go, and it's going to look exactly as you need it to. They've also updated their AI suite, which they call Magic Studio. Generally, this is across everything, so it's got a lot better, and it's kind of integrated in the whole sort of ecosystem of what they do. Again, I need an image, I need you to edit this copy, whatever. You can see it here. They're using it in their presentation tool. Here again, it replaces stuff like PowerPoint, that kind of stuff, which Adobe doesn't do for you. It's showing it in their Sheets app again. It's generally their AI tool integrates everywhere in their system, and their system is about outcomes. So what about Figma? What's going on with Figma? So Figma Sites is relatively new. This is essentially, for years and years and years and years, everybody has been saying to Figma, wouldn't it be great if my Figma files could just become websites? This isn't quite that. And I think it speaks to the reality of why a Figma file can't become a website. Essentially, this is a competitor for things like Webflow and Framer. It looks very similar to Framer, but it is more heavily integrated with Figma. So you can build sites directly in here. It's in beta at the moment. I'm not sure I would launch anything serious through it right now, but it's worth a little sniff and a little look. It'll probably be really good for short business card style sites, individual portfolios, that kind of thing. I keep talking about conferences, etc., but as a throwaway website for an event that you're going to use once, could be a good way of doing things, fast way of getting something off the ground. Figma Buzz is them nibbling at Canva's heels a little bit. So Figma Buzz is a bit like those work kits I just mentioned. Essentially, you have your designers in Figma or work on templates in like the advanced design views. They create those and then they sort of highlight certain areas of them that are CMS editable, if you will, for want of a better word. And then let's say you've got 50 speakers at a conference, somebody needs to fill out with all their headshots, what they're talking about, what time their chat is, all that kind of thing. Somebody could just drag in I think you can drag in a spreadsheet to it, or at least drag in all the files and go, right, this is my data, map it to the fields in this, and it'll go away and it'll just create you all those JPEGs or PNGs or whatever it is you need based on those templates, rather than manually editing them one at a time. So that's Figma recognizing that they have an opportunity in that space as well. So Figma Make is the other tool they've launched recently. Figma Make is a prototyping AI vibe coding tool, if you will. It's really good for I use this in pitching. So we go, okay, a client wants to see a cost calculator or something like that. We go, okay, well, what's that going to look like in their brand colors? Show them, an idea of what that might look like without having to go through the full development process on it. Obviously, when we make it, we'll do that. But just to show someone an idea, it's really good for making things like that. What it's not for is taking a full Figma design and turning it into a website, little bits at a time. And you can see here how they actually pair it up with Figma sites. So they make this clock and then they drag that clock into Figma sites. So that might be where the power of something like Figma sites could work for you if you pair it up with that. The other thing worthy of note is Figma Draw, and this is Figma chewing at Adobe Illustrator. They're essentially saying, okay, well, you can edit vectors in Figma, but it's not good enough. So let's do a whole view that you toggle to in Figma, which empowers the vector editing. And you can see here, they're doing all sorts of stuff. And you can see the collaborative stuff there with lots of different people working at the same time, choosing different kind of stroke layouts, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of what I'd consider it. If you just want to do some basic vector editing in Illustrator, currently you would open Illustrator, wait for that to open, do all that, copy paste it in. I don't need to do that anymore. I can just do it in Figma. It's not going to replace Illustrator if you want to be an illustrator, but if you just want to get some vector work done for the web, perfectly acceptable. So what's going on at Adobe in the meantime? So really, Adobe has taken a very different approach. They're not launching new apps at the moment. The ones they have launched recently have, I think it's fair to say, have been abject failures, partly because they've abandoned them, partly because they've not really been that good. So they're shoehorning their AI app, Firefly, which is admittedly useful. I said earlier, I'd talk about the stuff we still use Photoshop for. So one of the things we jump into there for is we'll take an image, a stock image, whatever we've got. We want to add some more empty space on the left of it or the right of it for a client's hero area. Firefly is really good at that. It can just create you more background. But that's an extremely niche thing, and that's probably one of the only things we still use it for. The rest of its output is not great, which we'll talk about in a moment. So they're just pushing AI into everything, but not as cleanly and not as intuitively as Canva are doing it. So, as I've just said, some of their AI is bad. I'm going to show you that as a sort of finishing slide, if you will. No major app launches in the last year or so, announcing stuff that never arrives, Adobe Spaces. Years, decades even, on some bugs that people have been complaining about. You will find there's less complaints about these bugs now because people are just giving up. They know Adobe won't fix them. So there's stuff in Photoshop that hasn't been fixed since 2005. Simple stuff, annoying stuff. They're more focused on the new than they are on the bedrock of their applications. And the prices keep going. So just to finish off, I want to talk about the difference between Figma's AI and Adobe's AI. Figma lets you choose between GPT-1, Google Imagen 3, or Titan V2. You might be able to give it an image reference if you throw it a URL. Never tried it, but there's no UI options like upload an image reference as far as I can tell. But that doesn't really seem to matter because Adobe has those options, but the outputs are rubbish because what you can tell, this was the prompt. So a soft 3D illustration of a red stick man with no face celebrating. Adobe's got some of that right. It has a stick man with no face and he's celebrating and he's 3D, but it's not soft. I wouldn't class it as an illustration. It's more of a rendering. So I would have to do work in Adobe to make that how I want that to look. Every single little stick man you've seen in this came out of a single prompt in Figma, and then Figma can AI remove the background, and then I've added a little logo on the face or something like that. And it was really quick, really easy. You could see how that might pair up with Figma's presentations thing. We're using something called pitch.com here, but Figma does have a slides program built in as well. So Adobe's main strength that it's talking about, it's AI, not that good. So, if you're looking at which boat you get on at the moment, I'd be seriously considering if you want to get on the big one or if you want one of the smaller ones that can avoid the icebergs. But yeah, that's where we're at with design. That's a very top level view. Some of this changes happened over the previous couple of years, but I haven't been on one of these for a while, but it's kind of where the tide is going. Next time I'm on, hopefully we talk about some specific tools that are new, that are useful, after some of you may have, jumped on the Figma boat or the Canva boat, and we can see what we can do in those applications for you. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, and I think we'll start fielding questions in the Q&A.
We will indeed. Thank you, James. I'm just going to show everybody from the webinar. So if I ask everyone to make sure their camera is on and their microphone is on, and we can start doing a few questions. Right, everyone there. Okay, so we are a little bit strapped for time. However, I will field some questions. I noticed some questions as Neil was talking, so right at the start of the presentation. So I'm going to take the first one that came in. Right. Okay. So Jacob, are there any actions we should take to make sure info in the About Us and the AI box is accurate?
Yeah, it's a tough one, to be fair, because obviously Google takes content from your site, but also from everywhere else on the internet, which may talk about your site. So you can do some things to kind of make sure that info is accurate. I would say focus on the EAT stuff I was talking about earlier. Trust signals, so kind of customer reviews, details about your business, make sure your business information is accurate across the internet. So whenever anyone mentions your kind of name, address, phone number, that kind of thing, keep that as consistent as possible. It's essentially about trying to make sure that you manage as much information about your business that you can possibly manage. Obviously, there's some stuff that's always going to be outside of your control. One thing that we've noticed is that the AI reviews are starting to appear for like reviews. So someone may Google one of our clients and then reviews. And then because AI is so obsessed with appearing to be always objective, it has to offer a negative bit, even if their reviews are 99% overwhelmingly positive. They'll still kind of end with, but some people have said this, which is really frustrating because it's not an accurate reflection. So I would say focus on reviews, focus on EAT, and focus on those trusted signals. That's the best way to counteract that, and hopefully, especially with reviews, Google will start to acknowledge that.
Cool. I'm going to take one question per area. So PPC question, if that is okay, Rob. How do you see AI overviews affecting paid ad placements long term? Do you think they will push ads further down the page or create new ad formats?
So I briefly touched on this earlier, but I think that the main thing to note is that ad revenue makes up 3/4 of Google's total revenue. So they're not going to do much to reduce the visibility of ads. AI overviews might be more prevalent in question-based terms, in terms where it's higher up the funnel and people aren't necessarily advertising. Then when you've got those bottom of funnel terms, they may show up a little bit more because essentially Google will feel that they've got a greater chance of getting a click. And as it's a cost per click based model, they really want to try and drive as many clicks as possible still. So I would say that the ad placement is going to shift around and we'll see it in different forms. But ultimately, I wouldn't worry too much. They're still very invested in making sure that you spend your money with them.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. And then one for Liam on the web side of things. So Shopify and WooCommerce are both rolling out big AI-driven features. Which platform do you think is best positioned to win in the next 2 to 3 years?
Can you hear it? Okay, come on.
Yeah.
So, hey, giving the politician answer, but it depends on what your requirements are. I think both platforms will share the market evenly over the next 5 years. There's nothing up and coming that's going to take them over, but I do think it's going to be if you've got a small product range or wanting a quick MVP shop, you've got medium size, fairly simple product range, you will go Shopify. If you need to integrate with lots of platforms, which we are seeing a lot more of, at the minute, Shopify is not that well suited to handling those because there's always customizations that are needed. I think both of them are just going to copy each other for the next 2 years, and then I do think they'll have their own lanes that they'll both sit in.
And then last but not least for James, selfishly, I'm going to pick a question I've just seen because I think it's quite interesting. AI generated creative. Where do you think it will have the most impact? So ideation, scaling assets, reducing costs, etc. What's your sort of thoughts and feelings around that?
Yeah, so I think the obvious and easy pick, the tempting pick is to say cost, isn't it? Like, if you look over the pond in Silicon Valley at the minute, they're firing everyone and anyone they can in design and tech to achieve an AI saving on the bottom line. But it's short-term thinking. They're firing human strategists, essentially. So I think it's fine to say make some efficiencies, make some savings on the small stuff, the stuff that was difficult, like the grunt work that took time but not creativity. Do more of that, do it faster, make more money. Excellent, everyone's a winner. But if you're jumping into a big project, or let's say you're a designer in-house somewhere and you've got long-term thinking because you're working on this company's project for the next 5-10 years, then what it should be doing is buying you space to do a lot of the stuff that everybody wishes they'd done more of at the end of the project. The amount of times that clients of ours don't want to engage in extended discovery, or they don't want to engage in a bit more strategy and a bit of review of the project because they've got a deadline to meet, they race on. If you can buy more time in that process to look at things, do some review, catch problems before they happen, pivot the strategy if it isn't right, then you're going to have a lot less of those conversations at the end that with hindsight, we should have spent more time doing X/Y. I think we had one of these just the other day, actually, with someone. So I think it's more about buying time for designers to do the design bit of designing. Moving boxes around in Figma is a tool. It's artworking, essentially. The design happens in here, and the more time that we can buy designers to do that, the better results we'll get. And, short term, you might not see that difference, but in terms of planning and longer term, that's going to pay dividends. So, yeah, make some efficiency savings on the small stuff, ramp it up, do more of it, do it faster. But on the big stuff, buy yourself time. And that's what we've been doing. I think it's been working quite well.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you all, Rob, James, Neil, Liam. Really useful. Hopefully everybody who has logged in to hear from us today has found that session useful. Thank you for everyone that signed up. A real big percentage of people that signed up joined today as well, which is really positive to see. And a good bunch of you stuck around for questions as well, even though we have crept slightly over the time. So we have taken up over an hour of your time, which we're really grateful for this morning. Very quickly, so we do run these webinars every quarter. There's a good chance we increase the frequency as well, given clearly people are finding them useful and informative. So keep an eye out for that. Mailing list, LinkedIn, social media, etc. If you want to find out more about us, it's thedigitalmaze.com. My personal email is rob.twells@thedigitalmaze.com if you want to ask me any questions or get in touch with anybody on the call today. Feel free to do so. And yeah, really grateful. Thank you all for joining. We will see you again next time. Cheers, guys. Take care.
See ya.